Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Welcome again to this segment of the Oregon Voters Digest. We've got many issues that are facing us here in the Pacific Northwest, and more specifically here in the Portland metropolitan area. And that's what we're going to be doing here now in the very near future, folks. In fact, standing up for what's right. We just so happen we got our key person that's going to be sitting up here talking with us, Steve. How about Teresa? There she is. She's right here. Hey. Pull that seat up here and just bring her right here. Put it right in the middle of us, right there. She is the guest. Come on here, Teresa. How you doing? This is community television, right?
I know.
You got me?
I just got through seeing Apostle Cecil next door.
I figured that. I figured you've been working. I know you've been working as always. And by the way, that's the guest, folks. As you can see, it is community television. But we've got an excellent show for this hour, for that matter. Again, like I said, our keynote speaker today would be here on this particular segment will be Teresa. Today sounds like Creole, that thing.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Teressa Raiford, because I fall in the same category, right? And the second half hour, we're going to have Jamie Partridge, and boy, we got Camille from the Socialist Party, the national, right? International Socialist Party. And as you know, everybody knows Jamie. You know what I mean? So bottom line, again, we're talking about stand up for what's right.
That's right.
That's the whole idea, right? Bottom line, and we're going to have to really work at it this time around. We got some major elections from a national perspective. I'm focusing on here. Right here, everybody's got their own culture right now, so we got to take care of our business aspect of it. So with that, let's just jump right into the show. What we're going to do, Steve is going to basically kind of do a little introduction piece, because we're talking about education. We're talking about our Portland public schools, and you know about that. We've got the largest school district in the state of Oregon that's sitting right here, and some of the major issues that we're looking at is that what do we need to create equity in the school system, Portland public schools. Isn't that interesting? Mm-hmm. And so you're the key, but we're going to let Steve kind of give us a little introduction, because he sat on the school board for a while, right? I know he did. So Steve,
I voted for him.
Give us some info.
First of all, it's nice to be here with Teresa, because I admire her work so much that she does. It's terrific, and she knows a lot about the schools and the community that I don't really know about the community the way that she does. So, but what everybody talks about equity in Portland Public Schools. We need equity, we need equity, we need equity. Right. But I don't believe that we've taken the steps that you need to make it work, to get it going. And that's one of the things I'd like to talk about, and Teresa, I'm sure, has her own ideas too.
So let's start off with you, and then
what about the
steps?
For me, the main step is that you have to equalize the programs across the district first. Okay. And not so much first, but you have to do that. And then once you have the programs across the district, kindergarten through 8th grade, equalized, then you put on top the special programs. You layer the special programs according to need. Because some of the equity problems that we've had, one is you got better schools in terms of programs up in the West Hills of Portland and in the more well-to-do areas. And you do. Paul Anthony, who's real interested in this.
Who's on the board?
He's on the school board. Okay. He outlined it. And boy, you look at it and go, whoa. And it's been that way for years, since Matt Prophet was here. It's been like that for years and years and years.
He's a former superintendent.
And so if you don't equalize the programs, and then you can't measure, do you have equity? There's no measurement. There's no way to you just kind of catch as catch can, you know. Okay. This school gets this program because that's what the principal wants, and this school gets this, and this one doesn't get it because it has less kids. Now we take the number of children in a school and we give them programs according to that, but it doesn't make any sense, because the more well-to-do communities in Portland generally have bigger schools, and so they get a better deal. It's in terms of getting more programs, and then they can also raise money to get more programs yet, and so you have this whole situation that's not equal. And then when you get to the special programs, like kids, like special reading, say, kids who need special reading help, you don't have a way to see how that works. Okay. No one in the whole district can tell you how that works. We put them on because of this or this. It's just, and it needs to be clear. And so people in the district Well, you say we have a special ed kid or we have special reading. We get a special reading because we meet this standard, not because this principal is pretty good at hustling in a special reading teacher.
So right before, and I want to get her in there. You were on the school board, and you just recently aspect of it. Were you working on these equity
absolutely.
programs aspect
yeah,
of it?
yeah.
Okay,
Big
so
time.
would you cite maybe those programs that you worked on up to this particular point?
Well, I'll tell you what I worked on was trying to do that.
Like what?
And well, to get equal programs through the
Quantify.
K-8 because you had to you had to rebudget.
Okay.
And so the guy that they just fired, he was all over it. He was doing a great job, and I have no idea why they would fire the guy.
Just fired him.
And he was doing a terrific job of moving in that direction. He understood it, and they're trying to lay out the budget and change it so you had this equality, which allowed you to get to equity. Because really the programs are equality, but the special programs are where you get your equity.
Wow.
ESL, TAG, special reading, those types of after-school programs. Where are you going to put those, and why? How do you decide? So there you go.
Well, that's why we're doing this program.
Yeah.
That's what
why
I
we're
am.
doing the show right now, because the vacancy is gone up there now. So we got to give them some sense of direction, right? Fair?
Yeah, of
What do you
course.
think, T?
Well, I mean, my experience with Portland Public Schools, like Steve said, is focusing on equity. I used to work for an accountant. Equity is a return on investment. The equity programs that they have for the children that really need resources are not equitable at all. They're equitable for the administrators. They're equitable for the contractors. They're equitable for researching the issues around the oppression or discrimination that's causing the children to not get and receive the education that they should have. But there's no return on investment that's making the children have a better outcome. We're not creating better outcomes in our graduation rates. Our children aren't staying in school because they're experiencing a better time there, or more suitable value programs. And so one of the first things that I did as an activist, and just as someone that's concerned, was I asked for accountability through audits. I wanted to see exactly what was going on. And when we talk about equalizing our education system, it's the same thing as an audit. It's basically saying there's a certain standard throughout the state that we provide for children at every grade level. And if those children come into that school system or into that program, let's say first grade or third grade, and they're not at that level, then we're able to see that, and we're able to provide the equity in improving their outreach and opportunities to become on the same level as the other children. But what we've been doing is we've been determining that, these children aren't on this level, so we're not going to provide them the additional resources. We're not going to provide them the curriculum-based focus programs or any of that. And so, of course, they graduate into homelessness, suicide, jail. The school-to-prison pipeline is filled with our children that we say that we have equity for. And so it's just a continuous process of I don't know what you call it. When you're waiving people's FERPA rights, when you have all of these wraparound services and everything is facilitated to be a policing partnership rather than an outcome for curriculum development or any kind of educational excellence, it's clear what it is. It's a cattle. We're just basically shifting our children that we don't want in society into our prison system.
I noticed that I've
lying?
noticed that you've been before the school board with this same, i.e., talk, if you will. Did they respond to you? How
It
did they
wasn't
receive?
talk. We did surveys and we did petitioning and we went to the legislator and we sat on education committees at the state, and we've even had the last commissioner resign. So I think that we've done some, Commissioner Smith.
Okay.
So we've done some really serious practical work on behalf of families that we advocate for. But again, the leaders in our communities and our political leaders are not listening to the needs of the people that they serve. And so this problem continues. You will elect people that we think are going to come in and do the work that needs to be done. But then once they're in there, the status quo has this, let's say like Ray Leary said, a noose around their neck, because of everybody's challenge to want to get what they need out of this besides the children's needs. So it's really a horrible scam. It's a bad scam, and we still need audits. And when you have lawyers that are resigning, and you have commissioners being fired and different people leaving the state to basically not have to deal with being accountable, then you know you have something that's wrong.
And then
I just wish that leaders that had power would speak up against it.
And I noticed one of previous leader, Ron Herndon, is back on the table again, talking about the
We got the dang near 80-year-olds coming back to the table. If they empowered the younger leaders in their community, if they empowered those younger educators that are standing there with the families rather than divide again, that old guard, let's look at who's responsible for equity over the last 25 years, our children falling into these crises. I don't see any value in a lot of those old timers, and I'm not saying nothing bad
I'm
about
a millennium.
Well, whatever the millennials was before.
I've always said Bruce didn't have much value anyhow.
But I think it's a generation that needs to sit their butts down and need to let the next generation do what's necessary for the kids, because what's happening is that their way does not work.
Yeah, I know.
And there are new ways to make things work, but they don't want to work into those new ways. So we're demanding change on behalf of these children and these families. And what people need to look at is, let's say I'm a contractor. Let's say that I'm a contractor with Portland Public Schools. Let's say that my focus is children of color. Let's say that those children are starving, falling into prison, dying, not being educated. They're failing. As a business person, I couldn't continue doing business with that type of contractor. But in our community, because equity is so important when it comes to color, not an outcome, but just making sure that we do business with each other, the children's outcomes don't matter. And that's just disgusting. It's out of line. At some point, we're going to figure it out, but I hope, it's sooner than later.
One of the things that happens around what Teresa's explaining here is that as a school gets more messed up, people leave. Under the present system, parents move. They don't want to keep their kids in that school, and you can't really blame them.
To.
Yeah, and some of them don't have to, so they leave, which gives them less children and less parent support, and so that school goes down more. It's kind of a downward spiral, and we have schools throughout the district that get in that spiral, and and the only thing that, in my opinion, that's going to get them out to begin with is to equalize this stuff. Yeah. So I'm not deciding, where do I want to live in this school to have a good school? They have music programs and this over here, but my neighborhood school doesn't, so I'm going to move, or I'm going to try and figure out some way to get my child there. And in actuality, then, this downward spiral makes the schools worse and worse. Yeah. And you have to stop it so you can measure it. So what is lacking? You can't measure it now. For instance, they give 4% to some schools, both for the number of children of color and also for the economic situation. So it's a total of 8%. That they give more money, 8% more to some schools, to basically poor schools or schools that have more children of color, which sounds great, except how do you know where they're using that money? Are they just putting on an extra vice principal to make the principal's job easier? We can't measure it because we don't have a base. And the base is what would allow us to measure and see, okay, everybody has this. What do they have? Oh, they have this and this extra. Well, those aren't really helping the children. Maybe they should have this.
And that's where an audit comes in. You audit, you oversight, and you create a system that works for all of our children. And those that are lacking, and part of that system, when you're doing that audit or you're checking the oversight, you're seeing where they're lacking, and you create programs to help establish them to where they need to be. But we're playing very unfairly in the state of Oregon in regards to our children's education.
Well, what comes up right off the bat is the big. We just passed the largest bond measure in this area in the history of Portland Public Schools, and you see major construction outside of the black community, and Jefferson High School is just left alone. I'm throwing that on the table. What happened on that deal, Steve? Why didn't we get that refurbishing of Jefferson High School?
I guess
in terms of equity, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, in terms of equity, you should have. In terms of, I think part of the problem was they went after some areas where there were larger problems within the construction of the school. It was a construction bond. It wasn't it wasn't an education bond. There's no education out of that. It's a construction bond. So I think that's what happened. Madison was in there. But then you had Grant and Lincoln.
But safety for kids, and all this, that, and that.
Safety. Well, they did. The safety went across the thing. And that's where the guy who they fired was really great on safety, big time. He was excellent. He's the first time for years we've had somebody who really would stand up and say, this is unsafe, we need to fix it. There's this big fight now over Tubman. And do you open Tubman or do you not? Well, the question is, do you open it if it's really unhealthy?
Well, why
Or
are we
what
doing
do you
business
do?
there? They're doing business there. I was on the site council back in 2011, I believe, when they closed Tubman, and it was an all-girls school.
Yeah, they
the
closed the
Women's
school.
Leadership Academy, 99% graduation rate, focused on STEM, all children of color, 70% of them lived in poverty. And none of these same people that are fighting to get Tubman back open as a school were helping us keep the school open for those children. And those, in my mind, were the most vulnerable children in our communities. And they were fighting to establish that school so that it could be a place for all of the children. And so it's just funny that once they closed it, it became a programming school for
Fabian,
online
yeah, they put
schools, and then
Fabian in there.
became Fabian. And now we have other community leaders talking about now they want to reestablish it as an educational program school. Geographical tests need to be taken. I think they need to see if it is environmentally safe, and then we need to look at the politics behind closing it when it was operating at 100% graduation rate, transforming it into different programs that were basically holding spaces for different larger programs, and now making it a big deal about if we're going to reopen it. If it wasn't suitable for staying open back in 2011, I haven't seen any construction happening there that
Well,
would
it should
make
have
it
been a part
suitable
of the
now.
bonding issue.
Well,
You would think.
I talked to a woman who was on the original one of the committees in the 2011, 2010, and she called me up and said, "Steve, I think they covered some stuff up here. You guys need to look at it again." And so I got on and said, "We need to do that." And Virginia LaForte, who may remember, she's pretty
she's
sharp.
running- she's
She
running for
but
office.
no, but she just recently, she's very interested in the safety, environmental safety stuff, and she started pushing on them. And then they went and took some more looks and found out, whoa, there's some testing that we had that hasn't been done. It's the diesel. And right there, I mean, you look over the edge and you're right there on the freeway, and it's the diesel fumes and the way that everybody stops there. And they need, all but Yusuf Awad, who was the guy, looked and said, we need to do a comprehensive study to make sure it's okay, you know. And that's what it's come down to. Everybody really would like to open Tubman, I think, who's on the school board, but they don't. You got to look and say, and now he's gone. Are they going to do a comprehensive study? And make sure? I mean, there are a lot of people saying, well, it's just, it's the same old thing, but it's not the same old story. It's the old story of, is it really safe to put kids in there? And in my opinion, they need to do the comprehensive study, and if it is, fine, off you go. They don't build their middle schools very well in Portland anyhow.
And
We've
they don't
talked
build
about
any of
that.
their schools. They got rats at Martin
Well, I
Luther
meant
King in
the programs.
cafeteria. You know
I meant
what
the
I'm saying?
programs on their middle
But I'm
schools
just
are not
saying,
very good.
When the schools exist in communities where there's large amounts of poverty, or the children that are going there are impoverished, the schools are not well. They're disgusting. I go to King's School. I advocate for families. I'm in classrooms and there's rats running through the closets. We're in the cafeteria on a day where they're doing a performance. There's rats underneath. I mean, in the cafeteria. And they've known this. We got the lead. We got the rats. We have probably all kinds of lead and asbestos still in some of these buildings. And we're not looking at any of that. We're out there doing these giant retrogrades for these beautiful schools. Including new science and technology, but we're not thinking about these children, again, that are most marginalized. To me, it's pretty obvious. A child in a school that's impoverished, that has a lot of environmental diseases or violations, is more likely going to be hurt by that. First of all, probably because they don't have the same type of health care that a rich child would have. So that impact of that environment is worse for that child. Not being able to do anything about becoming sick, not being able to have a voice to the school board or to the district when they're talking about these alarming issues that are happening in their schools. And just like Steve had, some of the parents have the ability to say, you know what, I'm going to pick my kids up and leave this school and I'll take them over here. All that's done is subjected us to more safety violations to the detriment of our children.
Well, they did in the bond. In this bond, it is equalizing the safety stuff much better than they have in the past. In the past, it's terrible.
Yeah,
But it's not
about her
focused
concern?
on any
Well, what
of
I'm
the children
saying
that
is
live in
that-
Focus on
poverty.
these
Those
kids.
are
What I'm
Northeast
saying
Portland.
is that the safety in the bond, they wanted to do it without the safety stuff. The Lincoln community marched across town because they were upset because they were going to rebuild Lincoln. They weren't going to necessarily rebuild Lincoln in the November bond. I mean, and have a November bond. And I fought and said, and so did several other people, no. you have to do the safety in this bond. And we
They
put
did
it back to the spring, and they did do the safety in this
What
bond, and they're much
what
better.
about Northeast Portland? What about
They're
Jefferson
doing-
High School? What about the, no,
Well, they're not
not.
rebuilding, but they're doing the safety stuff.
They're doing the. Are you saying heavy
I'm saying that
refurbishment,
the
dealing with the
safety,
issues
So
she's
the
the
talking about?
safety
safety
stuff
stuff
is that
is
what?
going to be spread way better than it ever has been.
Well, it's not the
What
same
she's
thing.
saying is really good. It's
What
correct.
she's talking about.
Yeah, because and they weren't doing that. She's absolutely correct.
They're going to do that.
They're
you're
going
saying,
to do
on this piece.
the safety stuff, the lead in the water, the asbestos,
The
the,
rats, all that
mold.
stuff.
I don't know about the rats. There's nothing in there
you
about
should,
rats. But
man.
I know Franklin had. I had a
You
friend
didn't see
who was a
Kelly's
teacher at
program on
Franklin.
KTU when
used
we
to
had
see.
Timberly
Oh, there's
Tucker
rats
and
all.
our kids?
There's
Yeah.
rats all over. Yeah, Franklin had a huge rat
At the elementary school.
Huge
You know what's interesting about
Martin Luther King.
Yeah, what's
Rats.
interesting?
I'm sure,
what's
We
I'm
got
interesting-
$2 million
Rats
for a
like
music
crazy.
program there, but we couldn't get no
Couldn't
money
get
to
the money
fix
for the
the
rats.
Get
dirty
the rats.
You know what's interesting
rodent
about this
problems.
discussion is that they appointed, if you will, a black to basically lead the charge for the whole bonding measure construction. You know
They
that?
always do that. Believe me, they always
You
do
You
that.
understand what I'm saying, right?
I understand.
There
what
was
you're
people
saying, yeah.
fighting
He
to
had
turn
no
the,
kids.
the
He
soccer.
had no kids. He had no his background. He had no kids at all in the school. Okay, he didn't reach out. In fact, we tried to get him on.
Which one are you talking about?
Who's that guy that was basically running
Can't
the whole?
remember his
the whole
name.
yeah.
Last time or this
Yeah,
time?
this time. He was running the whole
You don't know his
bonding
name and
issue.
you was on
I
the
can't
school
say.
board?
Yeah, I
He
can't
was
remember.
a whole bonding issue guy. I called him and he was scared as hell. He
I was working
he didn't
through
want to see
somebody
me.
else.
He didn't want to come on the show with Steve. I said, "Come on."
Because
over
his
to
job
Steve.
was to reflect
His-
equity.
Yes, his equity, black face,
Black equity.
black face, the whole 9 yard. And we don't. We need to talk about kids, but the bottom line, a lot of times they talk about these kinds of issues using a black to open the door, and then once they open the door, they put them aside.
Well,
That's insulting. You got my point? And then here we got a black, and the guy could have said, "No, I don't want to be the lead person," but there he was. In fact, they had him on TV on Steve Dunn's show. Steve Dunn's
That's
show.
equity.
You know what I'm saying? Equity. Steve Dunn's show, and I think they imported this one black woman from back east to come in and say how great it was. I had never seen the woman. I didn't even know who she was.
well, if you go to the city archives, they've been importing black leaders for Portland
Jesus Christ.
Negroes since back in the 40s.
Oh my God.
You know, one of the things that bothers me is that and this is one of the things that makes sense, and I think this is one of the reasons that I really like Teresa's attitude about this stuff.
Okay,
I think she
yeah.
understands this, is that there's a lot of talk about equity from everybody. Even people on the school board, even people out in the CBOs, even people in the county. But in order to actually get there, you actually have to do things that create a situation where you can get to the equity. And that's what my problem is on the whole thing. They're not a situation created. They're not creating the situations where you can get to equity.
Not at all.
You know, I got some little things done, but geez, I'd go out and say, I can remember Matt Morton on the school board with me, and I said to Matt, Native American
Matt got
background,
his equity.
and I
Doesn't
said,
he have a good job now?
He sure
well,
does.
He got his equity.
I,
they all get their equity.
I
at
said
the
to
end
him-
of the
Open the
day.
door. Yeah.
I said to him, hey, what needs to be done for Native American kids in this school system? Whatever you want to do, you and I together, we can do whatever we want here, basically. The two of us together, you were following it, you were following it. If we'd have worked together, we could, and he basically just blew me off. It wasn't about the children in the school system and getting them
Well, he
equity.
got what he wanted.
He had
Steve, he got what he wanted. He put you aside. That's
yeah,
that's
but
the
I mean,
main thing.
my whole point is they've got to really lay down and lay out and say, this is what we need to do to get equity, and quit talking about it and actually do
Yeah.
what needs to be done.
Well, the point
It
that I
starts
made
with
when
caring for the kids, and they don't.
Yeah,
See,
it's kids
that's why I
up
started
front.
off the program by saying, stand up for what's right. In fact, here's a good example. And here's a woman I know for a fact. I know her. I know her background and whatever. She was standing up for what's right. When the moment she brings out Black Lives Matter, then that was that shield that said, get off the table and let's not listen to what she's saying. Got me? That's what. So bottom line is that we at a point now we got to say, stand up for what's right. And we got some things that were done wrong. Like I said, the physical structure of the buildings, the physical structure of the area, for that matter, for those kids. It just happened to be all black.
Outcomes,
You got my
the
point?
lack of outcomes,
The lack of outcomes.
children failing through that system,
Yeah,
the children
yeah,
overrepresented
yeah.
in our foster care and our juvenile justice system, their parents being overrepresented, the waiver of FERPA rights that protects the privacy of
Yes,
families
yes.
being misused against them in order to interrogate and investigate. Too much. It's too much. I think that everybody that's been, let's say if they've been there 10 to 20 years, they're part of the problem. The conditioning of being acquiescent in these times where there's a need for integrity and courage, they have to go. They have to go.
Another one of the problems, in my opinion, is that we're not focusing on individual children well. We focus on the test scores. And the test scores basically come out the same every time. And we don't even have a test that allows us to figure out for individual children where they're having problems and what we need to help them. We've got this system where people are profiting with a good deal of money, literally hundreds of millions of dollars that we're part of, and the testing system and the longitudinal database, which is
It's
the
like
purpose
the
stuff.
whole
And
public school system
and
is
it's not set up for
hustle.
children. It's not
The
set up for
standardized
children.
testing is a part of the hustle. The fake equity is a serious part of the hustle. Established protocol of research and data collection of our children, that
Part
is
of the
a
hustle.
serious hustle.
Yeah.
Those are hustle elements. I'm looking for the education.
Yes, right.
And we don't
right.
have it.
Oh, my God.
So we got a new superintendent. Will he understand that or will he not? Is a good
No,
question.
he won't.
Well, it was hard getting
Well,
somebody to
right.
even take the job
I
that
know-
had
I
a
know
piece of
that. I hear you. I hear
integrity.
you.
And in the system, you see, they got another one of the PPS lawyers just resigned, quit their job. When you got your lawyers leaving you,
Wow.
when you can't hire a superintendent, when half of the contractors that you're working with are being investigated because of their relationship with your administrators and everything else, you got problems. You got problems. We haven't even talked about the misogyny, the sexual violence, and everything else that's been happening from the top down.
Right,
That's
right.
been suitably pushed to the side anytime there's been an issue with someone speaking out about it. It's too much. And if nobody has heard us this long, hopefully they'll hear us today on your show. Hopefully they'll ask those questions. Hopefully their children matter more than the business.
Exactly. Well, you know, and all this, following up just on what you're saying, here's Steve. You know, Paul Anthony is there. But Steve, you were the driving force. You're not there anymore. Okay, so the concern I have is that where is that equity going to come up? How are we going to stand up for what's right? So we got to come up with another brand that gets you guys back at the table.
Well, the
I mean,
thing
scripts
is,
have
we're
already
not
been
we're
said.
not away from the table.
I know
The
that, but
point
I'm
is
saying
that
they
we
need
just
to
have to
listen.
use our
Yeah,
platforms.
we got to
That's
use
right.
those platforms. So I
Well,
appreciate
there's a real question
That's
about
right.
who's going to
That's
carry
right. That's
that
right. That's right.
equalizing
That's
of the
right.
programs
That's right.
and
That's
funding
right.
that way, and then layering the special
right.
programs
That's
on top. Who's going to carry that forward?
That's right.
The man who was kind of carrying it forward was Yusef Awad, who
Right.
they fired.
Right.
And so who's going to be
Paul
there?
Anthony can't.
Paul
They've thrown him
Anthony,
under the bus.
because they're
They've
kind
thrown
of
him under the bus.
They got on Mike as soon as he got elected. Each time they came into the office, from the time that they showed that they were getting ready to work for the
Right,
community,
right.
they were shut down by the people that are getting all that equity money.
And hopefully Julia might understand because she was there before. You would think.
Brewer?
Julia
Brenner?
Brenner.
Edwards,
You know,
yeah.
she was there before. You would think she would stand
Well, I
up for
had a
what's right.
2-hour breakfast with her right after she was elected
And what
in.
did she say?
All kinds of good, fantastic
Sounded good,
things.
didn't it?
Yeah,
Sounded
it all
good.
sounded good. We
Sounded
just got to
good.
hold them accountable. It sounded really good.
She's
We're
got
gonna
a
have to
history.
revisit her.
She has a history
well,
of,
maybe
of
what-
having difficulty making good decisions.
Right, well-
she
Well, she
has
just
that
needs a
long
little
history.
backup.
Well, maybe what
that
we
she
can
needs
do,
somebody
maybe
helping
we
her
can,
to do
we
that.
can do
but
is that since
it
you
ain't.
you got a contact with her and standing up for the rights, why don't you invite her to interview
I
her? Not
will.
me. You will interview her,
Okay.
and you guys will talk about the issue. Okay, is that fair?
It sounds
Okay,
fair.
there you
She
go, Julia.
accepts
You
it.
got it right there. Julia Brim Edwards and Teressa Raiford.
Yeah, they
right
can't-
here
they can't
on
keep
Oregon
hiding
Voters
behind the
Digest.
gatekeepers
Is that okay with
scaring
you?
them. It's
Would that be
okay with me.
you?
It's
In
okay
fact,
with me.
we'll keep you the focus point as chairperson, and we'll get all those other leaders, and you bring them at the table and talk with them. Right on.
Don't have
Yeah.
them scared
Huh?
of you now. They're going to say, we're not going on that
And
show.
then we got Steve right here. Because had it not
Next
been
thing
for-
they'll do is they'll have Teresa. They'll give her a job.
Yeah, but see, you're not.
I won't take it. They've been trying for years.
See, you're not
Don't
done yet
trust
either,
it.
by the way. You know, had it not been for Steve on the show right here, the water thing would have been still sitting there.
Oh, I already know.
Steve.
Steve
And
uses his
he's
platform.
the
When he
guy.
called me a couple
He
weeks ago, I
that.
said, let's use our
Then he
platform.
called me, and then
so.
at the end of it, making a statement or whatever, but it was Steve that did the job.
Well,
We
when
wanna
he was
commend you
talking
for that.
about getting vocational training
Yes.
back into the schools, he
Okay.
ran for the office
right.
and he got the seat
And
and
that's
he did
gone.
what he needed to do.
That's
the
gone.
vocational
So-
stuff, they have
That
improved
is
it
gone.
immensely. I've
That
We're
is
told
going
gone.
to keep working.
They've
It's not
That is
gone.
gone.
No, we're going to get
Hey,
it.
Paul is under the
it's
table.
improved.
Man, we got a new commissioner
improved
almost
a
coming
lot.
to North and Northeast Portland.
Is that
and
right?
She works with
well,
the...
no, we got you now. No, we got you now. You
Well-
and Steve.
You better quit
You and
counting on
Steve,
individuals
as chair,
and work your
as chair of the deal.
platform.
I'm not going to be there.
Work your platform to get
I'm
the
just going to
people
give you guys.
involved.
I'm going to avail the platform for you guys, and you guys can do the lead and the charge.
You better bring
Is that
on
a deal?
You better bring
So we
on
got
the next guys who get to
Is that the deal?
get to
Is that
run
the
this
deal? Shake my
show.
hand. Shake my hand.
I don't
Let's
know,
put this
Bruce.
unity thing
I
together.
don't know,
Give me
Bruce.
a hand.
I don't know,
You said do what, Bruce?
I don't
We're
know.
gonna be
I
together.
don't know.
You guys gonna use the show. I'm just the platform.
I don't
get your
think
hand
so,
over here.
Bruce.
There it is, folks.
I don't think so.
You're looking at new co-hosts. The new co-host on the Oregon Voters Digest to get. Oh yeah, that's good. That's right. You're right. You're telling them to come
I
on.
know. I'm
That's
letting them
right.
know what's
okay,
happening.
there it is. Okay, folks.
Bruce
well,
just-
now we'll see you in the
all the
next show.
Republicans that
and
watch
you'll
the
see
show
them.
is like,
you'll you'll see them as co-hosting this show, Oregon Voters Digest. And Julia, you're
Watch
the
all your
first guest.
sponsors
You
leave.
got the first guest, and she's going to be coming on pretty soon, right?
Yeah, we'll
Good,
see what
good.
happens.
And
I'll
Steve,
hit up.
You got Paul Anthony coming in, right?
See.
On the school board.
You can get Paul.
You better
Anthony
tell
in.
the
Oh, this is
Secretary
good.
of State
Come
to
in.
audit
We
the
bet- I
You
education.
better bring on. You better bring on some of the good, decent
Oh,
guests and get this
I
thing
better-
back on
I better-
because people
I
are
better
turning
stop.
off the channel, man.
Folks, I want to stop while we're ahead. We got two new co-hosts. New co-hosts. This is great. Thanks for being with us. We'll be right back with you for the next guest. Thank you. I guess I'm back. Gee whiz! I mean, we're getting such a discussion here. I mean, it was so neat to have gotten the response from my previous guests, and Teressa Raiford and Steve Buel of Portland School. I mean, the fact of it is, these are major issues that we're having here within our city. In fact, with poor kids and whatever, and blacks and the whole 9-yard aspect of it. So they're going to be co-hosting. They're going to be co-hosting. Steve Nash, who was a school board member at one point in time, I didn't want him to get there, but now he's back, if you will. And Teressa, who's a very active person, and she spent a lot of time in the schools and the kids and whatever. She happens to be the Black not Black United Front.
And Don't Shoot Portland.
Don't Shoot Portland.
Yep.
And she's a very articulate person, and she's been very, very out there. And it's going to be great because it's all about stands up for what's right. Stand up for what's right. So, folks, I'm leading right into this next part of the deal, and right up front with, I'm excited about this part of it too. And again, it's all about stand up for what's right. And we've got with us today, we got, besides Jamie, everybody knows Jamie, but we got Camille. Camille, what was that? How you spell it?
Avian.
Avian.
Yeah.
Avian. Of the International Soviets.
International Socialist Organization.
But I like that. See, but see, sometimes
Close, though.
Yeah, but
We're
you know the whole idea is that you know how
pro-Soviets.
we're smiling about this, that, and the other. The fact of the matter is, we're just getting things together. You know, in all due respect. And I think we need to share everything. Everybody needs to come to the table because at the end of the day, we are going to be a United States and a united effort, if you will, for livability and all for all.
That's the goal.
That's right. Right. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. So now we got the show. Hey, look, I'm going to sort of throw it out to you.
You want me to
Jamie.
start?
So why don't you start out?
Okay, so Bruce
Introduce
asked me on the show because of a post that I made on Facebook about the hashtag #MeToo
Right.
tidal wave of testimony on social media about sexual harassment and sexual assault, coming off of the revelations about Harvey Weinstein, the Hollywood mogul, who's basically been brought down by 6 women revealing that he had raped them, dozens of women revealing that he had sexually harassed them and assaulted them. And then within 24 hours, 500,000 posts on this, using this hashtag #MeToo on Facebook primarily, women telling their stories about being sexually harassed and sexually assaulted. And I started seeing it on my Facebook page, my
Me
friends,
too. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
women,
Yeah.
mostly women friends, telling their stories of sexual harassment, sexual assault. Talking to my sisters, I have 4, all of them, been sexually harassed or, attempted or assaults. And someone, one of my male friends, messaged me and said, "So, what's your take on this, Mr. Partridge? And I posted a little paragraph, and you saw it, and you said,
Yep, I did.
come on my show. And I said, I will,
Yep.
if you let me bring in my comrade,
That's
Camille.
right. That's right.
But my basic response was the same that I had 50 years ago when the women's liberation movement was kicking off, right? It's on a little button on my bulletin board.
Yep.
Listen to women.
Listen to women. Interesting.
Believe them.
Wow.
Trust them. And try. That's you and me.
Yes,
Try
exactly.
to put ourselves in their shoes. Try to empathize deeply with what they're telling you, what they're experiencing. And then check your behavior. Check the behavior of other men. But don't guilt trip yourself. Don't blame yourself for what you were taught growing up. I was a sexual harasser in junior high school. It wasn't until I ran into the women's liberation movement after I got away from home that I learned anything about treating women with respect, right? It's a whole system. And, the only way it's really going to change is if we collectively, act with women identified people to change this rotten system. And collective action is the only thing that's going to change it. And collective action is what's going to change ourselves in the way we relate to each other.
Standing for what's right. Fair?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. Well, with that introduction, Camille, welcome to the Oregon Voters
Thanks.
Digest. Hey, give it to us.
Happy
Let us
to
know.
be here.
Yes. Give us a little bit about the organization first.
Yeah, so I'm a member of the International Socialist Organization, and we are socialists and activists. We organize around a bunch of different issues. We organize definitely against sexual assault, and when the struggle was happening, for example, at Columbia with Emma Solkowitz, who carried her mattress around Columbia. Our comrades tried to support her as much as possible and took part in feminist organizations on campus that popped up. But
Explain why she was carrying a mattress.
She was carrying a mattress because she was raped in her dorms by a fellow student when she was a freshman, and it was carrying the weight of her rape, and it was actually a very powerful thing. Activists helped carry the mattress with her, and it became like a mass protest for people to support her as a victim, but also to, show that it's something that you can recover from, but it never really leaves you, because, somebody taking your power away, kind of, not respecting your personhood, basically. And Columbia, never did anything about it, and in fact, recently paid a settlement out to the person who raped Emma.
To the wait a minute. You said you paid a settlement to her.
No, they paid a settlement out to the person that she accused of rape because of emotional damage. His lawyers sued Columbia. Anyway, it's really horrible.
Wow,
but I think
we have another discussion.
Yeah, something that's encouraging, more encouraging, unfortunately. I think that the movement itself was very encouraging, but the outcome of it is that Emma wasn't able to get any kind of justice from Columbia University or for her rape at all. And I think that that's very common, unfortunately. And that's why Me Too is so powerful, and that people like Weinstein, like Louis C.K., like other famous folks are actually being affected by this. Because these stories they're not new. Weinstein was first accused of sexual assault and rape, I think, in the 80s. The stuff with Louis C.K. came out, I think, at least 5 years ago, if not longer than that. And so now it's just that people are taking these accusations seriously. It's not that they're coming out. It's that finally they're taking it seriously. And I think in part that's because of the Women's March that happened on January 21st, you know, is the largest demonstration in the United States history. Over 4 million people came out into the streets that day. And I think it's because we have not just an admitted sexual assaulting rapist in the White House. He's proud of it, you know, and it was a shock to everyone, everybody who was a liberal or a socialist. I'm sure you were pretty shocked by it as well, even as a Republican, like everybody thought that the recording of him saying that you just grab them by the pussy would mean that he wouldn't win the election, and then he won. And you know, the White House to this day, their line on the now 12 women who have come forward to accuse President Trump of sexual assault, that they're liars, you know, and that's like incredible in the face of this Me Too campaign. There's this really great quote from James Baldwin. James. Yeah, James. And I mean, almost everything I was saying to Jamie on the way over here, that like everything he wrote basically is quotable. But this quote: "The victim who is able to articulate the victim, the position of the victim, has ceased to be a victim. He or she has become a threat." And I think that that's really important. You know, it's like there are lots of victims who are just left feeling powerless, but once we can actually articulate our position and say, you know, I'm not alone, like this happened to more than just me. And that brings me into another point, is that most rapes are committed by serial rapists, which is like a 5-10% of men, based on a couple of studies. One has some problems, but I think they're pretty accurate in their numbers. But they commit, this 5 to 10% of men commit 60% of the rapes, and that stands up with what we're finding out about Weinstein and all of these other people, is that like they're serial abusers, serial rapists, serial sexual assaulters, and it is very widespread, and like the system in Hollywood and quite frankly under capitalism protects abusers and sexual predators, but this Me Too thing is showing that you know, we can talk about it. You know, it's kind of like the personal is political thing that happened back in the 70s.
But there have been like 30 high-level men that have been brought down in recent weeks in this wave of women coming forward and breaking the silence. And it's a really new phenomenon, where primarily these guys are all lawyered up and have ways of intimidating, you know, not only defending themselves, but you know, getting these women fired or their careers destroyed, or whatever, that they end up losing out big time. And the studies show that 75% of women that report any kind of sexual harassment are retaliated against. And so unless you've got a union at your workplace that can has the power to defend you when you make an accusation, you're most likely to lose your job or lose that promotion or have your career destroyed or whatever. And of course, women tend to be in more precarious, lower wage jobs where they're not only themselves hurt by retaliation, but their families, because they're often responsible for not only children, but taking care of the sick and the elderly and their extended families. And so 90% of sexual harassment is not reported for those reasons, because women know they're going to be retaliated against not to mention the fact that of those that do report, very few of them actually get some kind of justice. That is, where the accuser is actually punished in some kind of way. The Obama administration, one of the good things they did was to enforce equal education opportunity on college campuses. The Title IX,
Right.
gender opportunity made very specific that if a woman accuses a man of sexual harassment on the college campus, that she cannot be forced to take a leave of absence. She cannot be. She can be allowed to move to a different spot on the campus. She can. What are the other things? Oh, she's entitled to free counseling. She's entitled to free medical care. All these really specific things. So there are ways to put in place, structures that make it more possible for women to report. But of course, what's happening under the Trump administration, that's all being rolled back.
But we must remember again too, this culture, it's a culture. It may look as if it's recently, but really it started during slavery.
Right.
Remember the movie Roots that we all kind of blah blah blah, and there it was. The raping was happening, but no one said nothing because we were talking about blacks at that point in time. And so I'm somewhat thankful that this happened today, because we can use that reference. We need to talk about that issue. That's why we're doing this show. You got me? And those who basically participated, whether with their parents or whatever, it just kept going within our society, and no one said anything about it. We have to stop it.
Yeah.
You can't challenge, and a lot of times, like you're saying, a lot of folks are just calling in and say, yeah, they raped me, and then, well, where are the facts and this, that, and the other? No, you have to talk about this issue, because at some point we got to have some sense of solving the problem. At some point, what are we going to do? And then now the question is, where do we go? How far do we go? The fact of it, and if we don't discuss this, and in some ways, you're going to have to admit it, just like you just shared it to a certain degree, because even as kids, you know what I mean? The young male would always basically do what he wants with the girl and pull her panties down and stuff like that. And you heard these things, but nothing was done.
Right.
And she was just the woman across the board was just, i.e., that was the culture. That was okay to do those kinds of things. I mean, when I look at the slavery aspect of it, look at my color. Look at my skin color. Look at the various colors in it. That was rape.
Yeah.
And then people need to talk about it. And so I think that's a good thing that we're talking about it, because we can't go any further. We're becoming more sophisticated. Technically speaking, we're communicating to the world that we are the ones, if you will, that's the manner that they're doing the right thing and this, that, and the other by both. Because you hear things about, i.e., how you're treating women, how you're doing this, how you're doing that.
And rape,
but what are we doing here?
Rape
and so we have to do something.
was a weapon. Rape was a weapon in
and it still is.
Enforcing slavery.
It's
a weapon and used in war.
Yes.
And it's particularly used against the most vulnerable populations, women of color, black women in particular, who are concentrated in low-wage, precarious jobs. The percentage of women that have been sexually harassed in hospitality and in agriculture, which is predominantly Latino women, right, is way up there in the 80s, 90%.
But don't forget, though, Jamie, there's also with well-to-do women. Some women get raped, but they don't say anything just to be in the big house.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean? And those folks are feeling it. They may not say something publicly, but if there was a vote and there was no, they would vote.
Well, I mean, I think that's one of the things. That's one of the things that was happening in Hollywood. That's come out as like Weinstein would assault someone and then he'd put them in a part or something like that. It's like they use these powerful men use their economic power, their racial power to silence victims, and intimidate, like what Jamie was saying. But another thing is like the reason, there's those social reasons that people don't come forward. But then there's also like the legal reasons, like police are very large perpetrators of sexual violence. And actually, since we're talking about, since you brought up racism, every time somebody goes through the criminal justice, we say criminal injustice system, they're sexually assaulted by the state when they process. Like when they do a cavity search, that's sexual assault. You know, I think that's something that nobody without duress would consent to that.
That's right.
You know, and there's Teresa was talking about the school to prison pipeline. You know, there's the slavery to prison pipeline that I think is much deeper, you know, and plays right into that school to prison pipeline. And it's older. I mean, unfortunately, it's older than that because women were once thought of as a man's property, and rape actually meant like violating a man's property, not violation of someone's personhood. So our philosophical definition has changed with the change of class society, but also with you know, I think that's one of the things that we have to thank for the feminist movement in the 60s and 70s is they changed the definition of rape legally. You know, legally women, y'all are familiar with this because y'all were alive back then, but women, if you were married, it was 100% legal for your husband to rape you. And that was true across the United States. And also something that was incredibly shocking to me, not surprising, but shocking when I read Assata Shakur's autobiography. Assata, she talks about how in the United States, in big cities, there used to be like these rape gangs that would like rove the streets that were actual like something that's not as true anymore, that like these the stranger danger kind of rape, but like she was attacked and got away from one of these groups of men when she was like 15 or something, and that's something that I think is like not really a public problem anymore. It's more problems of like the Steubenville rape case where it's like the this group of young men who anyway, they're a group of people. They're not like a gang exactly, but like they act as a gang because that's how rape culture
and they
plays
talk about
out.
it as permissive.
Right, you know, and they silenced that young girl, you know, and then finally she was able to come I think it was actually Anonymous that hacked the website of the high school. Anyway, whatever. But but I think like what's happening now with Me Too,
it's putting it on the table.
Yeah, it's putting it on the table. It's something that needs to be talked about. It's been an open secret for too long, and it needs to not be a secret anymore. You know, that was one of the first steps of the feminist movement.
And then talk
that
to
I was
a
just
solution
talking about.
In terms of where are we going? We need to talk to a solution. But it's good to keep this thing up here now, the door open. And folks will get in, and when you see more responsible people coming in, and more people just throwing on, and more men coming to the table and admitting the fact that they were part of the process. Now the game is, then let's talk about solution to the problem. See, and on that particular note, what I'm going to do is that we got about another minute or two, but let's talk about where do we go from here, and let's make sure that we can say let's have another show, and let's bring this young lady you were talking about, the one with the marriage, because that's local. And some folks can relate to that. So we'll do another show, you know what I mean, that we will take it from there, and hopefully we can maybe find that attorney or something, or that young man that did what he did, and come up with his rationale as to why he did what he did, and hopefully he can admit, and hey, I'm sorry, or whatever. But my point is that we have to, because it has to take both sides, and it's because if we don't do something, then it's just a total castration system on the other end.
Well, it's important to realize that the studies show that anywhere from 2 to 10% of accusations about rape are false. That we really need to believe women when they say that they're being sexually assaulted.
Yeah.
But the 98% I'm talking about.
And the Trump administration, their Department of Education now,
they're attacking Title IX.
The Civil Rights Division, the head, her name is Candace Jackson, is saying that 90% of these accusations of sexual harassment on campus are false.
Which is not true.
So this is the attitude of the administration.
But it's not the attitude of all. People just don't say nothing.
What we need,
as long as it doesn't touch them and touch their pocketbook, but it's going to come.
We need to see the kind of
We got to work on
collective
this.
mobilizations that the Women's March produced,
Right.
and the kind of tidal wave of togetherness that the hashtag Me Too movement has shown to be able to push back and to get the kind of protections that women need. And part of what that is women having the economic and social power to be able to not have to worry about losing their job or not having enough money to pay the rent because they paid so low.
You can rest assured there's been a number of discussions from the bosses to the woman that was working for him that maybe he had raped. Understand what I'm saying? People are discussing it. Trust me, because the fear, if you will, because it's all about power and money in many ways. It's power, and so. But the bottom line is that you got to have the discussion, and we have to come up with something that will satisfy the woman, if you will, to show she can come up and feel whole for a change. Right now, there's a big gap in there, and people are going to open up their expression. They're going to share what their thoughts are. That's where we are, and that's what they should be doing. The key is that the fault is on the man. So where is the male? You got to come up with a not denying it, but actually coming up with a solution to that problem. That's where we are. So on that particular note, I think that's where we are. We got about 30 seconds. That's it, folks. We've got about 30 seconds aspect of it. So we'll give you the last word. Will we agree? Do we agree? Will you be here?
Sure, I'll come back.
Put the show again? Can we do the show? Let's get the show here. And we got Jamie here, and he's gonna be the host of that particular show. Is that fair? He's gonna be the host on that particular show. We got it. Awesome. Then he puts his This is good. Thank you very much. This has been really great. Folks, that's where we are, folks. That's what it's all about. Hey, we can come out with this thing. This can be the United States of America and doing the right thing. And that's important, okay? With that, have a good one. I'll see you next week. Take care.